Before we begin, just a quick disclaimer you might encounter strong language. Whoopsie! We also want to be clear that the things we say are our opinions and in should no way be taken as medical, health, or dietary advice. We also are aware that we have certain privileged experiences and therefore we are not able to be representative and we don't even aim to be representative of all the things that people have lived and felt that we have not.
I'm fat and I am a little fussed about how I spread when I sit. So,
I'm fat and sometimes I'm ashamed of my body. So,
I'm fat and I prefer being alone to showing my frumpy when I'm grumpy. So,
what are you like tan from Queer Eye? From Grumpy. I'm fat and I refuse to be shamed for my body. So,
I'm fat and I'm still uncomfortable showing my legs. So,
I don't know why, she has awesome legs. Anyway, I'm fat and I often feel a little stab of shame when I order a burger. But I do it anyway. So,
do it! Let's do it together next time we're together. Anyway, welcome to Fatso, the podcast where we talk about the joys and sorrows of being fat women in India. Heavy on the joy. I'm Pallavi.
And I'm Ameya, and apparently Pallavi's had too much coffee. Today, we're talking about shame. So shame, we all know shame, right? Shame, puppy shame, all the monkeys know your name. Ah, God, I fucking hate that rhyme. It's like the constant companion. It's like your best frenemy, you know? It's like always sitting right there next to you, chipko in your space, in your head space, just driving you insane. Shame, constant companion for the fatsos. Shame for your size. Shame for your body. Shame for daring to exist. Shame for taking up space.
Yeah.
Shame for refusing to be ashamed. Shame for needing love. Shame for trying. Shame for not trying. Shame for wanting friends. Shame for not having friends. Shame for being hungry. Shame for needing to diet. Shame for having a body. Shame for the clothes you get. Shame for wanting other clothes. Shame for trying to get other clothes. Shame for the love you feel for others. Shame for just existing. You know, it's bad enough that society shames us for our bodies, but then it also uses us to shame other people. That's the thing about fat phobia that really ticks me off. Okay, honestly, there are a lot of things about fat phobia that really tick me off. But this just add this to the endless list, right? Because it's ridiculous and it's outrageous, right? Because it's like saying, look at how horribly we shame these people, these savages, these transgressors, these creatures who barely have a right to live. Look at that. That's what'll happen to you. That's how we'll treat you if you dare to cross the border. Always stay thin. That's the mockery. That's the humiliation you'll have to endure as a fat person. Look at how we treat them. We will treat you. And why are we treating them this badly? Because they deserve it. Because they have done the most disgusting, shameful thing of all. They dare to exist.
Ay, ay, ay.
When you think about it, which of course I like to do, why does shame even have so much power over humans? I suppose we are a social species. They always say man is a social animal. But we are social. The reason that humans actually manage to survive is because we band together and we work together in tribes to take out creatures and animals far more dangerous than us, right? So that's the way we run it. We work together. We have to function together. The whole concept of our existence is built on being together in some way or the other, which has lots of consequences for identity as well, but that is not in the scope of this episode. So what that means is that we are always trying to fit into society. We want to belong. We need to belong. There's an almost primal drive to belong, right? And there's a primal horror of things that don't belong because that's not the rules. It's a reminder of what could happen to you if you don't stay with the tribe. A tiger will eat you, effectively. So we can't survive without the tribe, and that's what pushes us to want to come together and coalesce so much. And when we do that, we have to abide by the rules of the tribe, right? Unless, of course, you are really, really powerful, whether that's wealth or strength or minions or whatever it is, that gives you the ability to flout it. But still, public opinion and what people think, it still carries a lot of power. Whoever you are and however much you may flout the rules. And you don't want to get on the bad side of public opinion. That's like a fundamental tenet of human nature. We don't really want to. Why do we get embarrassed? Why? Because you just feel like, no, this is not making sense. And in some ways, it actually helps, because in some ways, this is why you don't, okay, I was going to say this is why a man doesn't walk up to you on the street and grab you by the tit, but sadly, that does happen in India. But I mean, it happens a lot less than it does, say, online, right? Because there's no shame online. You're anonymous. Nobody knows who you are. You can behave however you want. You can send someone a picture of your penis. But if you walk up to a woman on the street and show her your penis, it happens, but it happens much less frequently than, say, the dick pic does. And the reason of that is simply because you are being held in check by shame and social expectations of you. But the problem is that it also gives our good friend, the dick society, a huge weapon to use, because living in shame and trying to avoid shame is something that we all deal with all the time. And the problem happens is when this weapon is used to enforce inequality, to enforce oppression and discrimination. When it's used to force people to toe to the line, but they don't have a say in the line, and the line involves removing their personhood, things like that. So, like Wikipedia, I went and did some Googling, and let's use Wikipedia because even though it's not officially counted as an official source, it's where everyone goes. So, here's what Wikipedia has to say about shame. Shame is an unpleasant, self-conscious emotion typically associated with a negative evaluation of the self. It's associated with motivations of withdrawal, with feelings of distress, exposure, mistrust, powerlessness, and worthlessness. You see?
Terrible.
You see how useful this can be?
Absolutely.
If somebody is getting all uppity, if a woman starts to think that she has a right to, own property, and you shame her. You tell her she's a slut, you tell her she's a whore, you tell her that you're questioning her chastity, her faithfulness to her husband, and then she immediately it strips her of her power. So similarly with fatsos, right? Yeah. I mean, these are feelings we've all felt in our lives, fatso or not, in some way or another. And shame itself, like I said, is not a bad thing. The problem is when it becomes a tool of manipulation. The problem is that fat phobia and fat stigma are so deeply entrenched in the way we view and we experience the world that we cannot handle fatsos who don't apologize for their existence. We just are unable to deal with it. And Pallavi and I see this all the time when we put information out there, when we put content out there. Like everybody feels the need to come and say you're a fat, ugly cow. Do some exercise, bitch. Like that brute video, the number of comments that were basically, why don't you spend some of this energy on doing some exercise? And I'm like, okay. Because that's the thing. We just can't tolerate it. You have to, you have to exorcise that fear, that flip side, that shame will be mine. If I acknowledge this and I'm also transgressing, then society gets to ostracize me as well.
Yeah.
And this we that I'm talking about includes fatsos. I mean, it's not just that non-fat people only see fatsos as not having, as transgressive. We ourselves do it because we are also raised in the same fatphobic society, right?
Absolutely.
And we have even more reason to hate our bodies than everyone because we're always being told that your body is the reason why you can't have anything. Your body is the thing that stands in the way of all your dreams. Yeah. No, you don't have good eyesight, but if you were thin, you could be a pilot. What is this logic? So shame becomes a way for us as fat people to signal that we know our place. We know our worth. हम औकात में रहें. हम औकात में बैठे में. साहब हम औकात में हैं. If you are ashamed of yourself, if you publicly perform shame as a fatso, then everybody knows that you are a transgressive, horrible creature and that you know that you don't deserve to be a fully human, so it's okay. The minute you start thinking that, hey, then that's when people just, they can't fucking handle it. So, as long as you're sitting out there and you're being a good fatso, you're like, look, I'm eating a salad, okay? I'm running, I'm exercising like crazy. Look, I'm ashamed of my body. I'm trying to be like you. It's fine. And that's the thing with shame.
Yeah, and I think for me, shame is also problematic because of exactly what you said. See, at some point, it perhaps was needed because emotions were the language of staying in that tribe or in that community, right? Because language wasn't as developed as it is now. or society wasn't as developed as it is now, and therefore some of these things were required for survival. Our emotions were required for survival. It's exactly what you said, that now it has been manipulated to control us far more, and to control not us. It has been manipulated to control our spending behaviors. It has been manipulated to control the choices we make, which result in our spending behaviors. So now all of these emotions are being used for capitalism. They're being used for those with property who want to amass more property and who want to control the world, so to speak. No. The thing is, Maya, the thing is, for me, society as a structure is very driven by these very few people who have, got to a place where they can enact this control. And the thing is, it percolates because everybody is trying to, copy everyone else.
Straight white men or straight Brahmin men in India. But
yeah. So it percolates, and therefore we're all doing it to each other because we think that's the way to live, but it's not. And what really bothers me about the whole thing around fat phobia and fat acceptance and using that to shame people is that now the science and the research is available on how, this is not something that is calories in, calories out. It's not something that you control and have the willpower and you change it. In fact, it is extremely harmful to the person to keep wanting to lose weight because they basically are prisoners in their own minds and in their own lives.
But that's just the point. Because that literally makes our point. Because the thing is, it was never about rationality. It was never about logic or sense. It was always about control. And this is the thing you realize about almost all of the structures inherent in society. Whatever it is, it's about putting you into your place to let the status quo continue. Or to continue to amass power in the hands of the few. And this is why revolution is the only way it goes. And before this turns into the I'm a Marxist so podcast with 2 MBAs. Oh God, let's just go back to shame.
Yeah, but I think you can't talk about shame without talking about the fact that it is way beyond just fat phobia. It's an added layer to fatsos, that fat phobia also. But, even as a woman, the thing is, and that's why we say we're talking about the joys and sorrows of being fat women in India, because that's a whole different layer. Because, there's the whole shame around, you're told that you will never be lovable. You will never be capable of, having sex with someone because your body looks ugly. But then there's shame around sex as well.
Yep.
It's just like, where does it even end? So, for me, I honestly don't remember feeling shame as a separate emotion. But, I guess that's just because it's so deeply enmeshed with everything that I did, right? So for me, I think my first interaction with shame was being told that I can't control myself. And this happened when I was 3 years old, maybe 3.5 years old. Like I remember I was all dressed up for school and I peed my pants in the morning. And I was scolded because you have no control. How can you know? Now I know that I was 3. I remember I wanted to puke and I ran out of the classroom. Again, I was 3 or 4. I ran out of the classroom, but I couldn't make it to the toilet stall like I did it in the sink. And I was scolded by the maid in this thing saying, can't you control your thing? So I heard it at home. I heard it, and it's just a couple of times that you hear it. And as a child, I guess it's just then, you just take it in, right? You just absorb it and make it who you are. That I'm someone who can't control my body. The number of times I was told that, why can't you control yourself? Arey, I've just tripped, yeah? I've tripped. Who controls their limbs when they've tripped? Like, how does that even happen? And I was told, you see, you're fat, no? So that's why when you trip, you can't control yourself. And I'm like, really?
of nonsense people will spout just to continue to reassure themselves.
Seriously. And I mean, I still remember, and this was I felt such betrayal when this happened. I think we were after school, my mum and I were going to the dietitian, and we had a chauffeur driven car. So I was sitting at the back, and I must have fallen asleep, and I don't have control over my limbs when I'm asleep. I mean, I thought that was what sleep was all about. But when I woke up, my mum was like, "You're so disgusting when you sleep. You just spread, you know?" And I felt it was betrayal. It wasn't even shame. It went beyond shame to betrayal. Like I was asleep. How can you judge me when I'm asleep? I didn't have the words for it, Mia, but I felt I felt betrayal from her. I felt shame. And then I felt betrayal from myself because I'd spread when I was asleep.
Yeah, I need a time machine, Pallavi, to go back into time and like kidnap you from your family and bring you into mine.
Yeah, so and then this was and not only was I shamed for my behavior, but this was said in front of other people. Because I think with my mom's fat phobia, and the way I've understood her to be now, and her need to appear a certain way in front of other people, she needed to feel ashamed for her daughter being fat for it to be valid.
Yeah.
And it's not like she was the most skinny person. So I think, it was her own internalized fat phobia of her own body. And I'm ashamed of my body and I'm ashamed of my daughter's body. That sort of thing.
And probably also her own fear of being like, I'm a bad mother if I don't shame my daughter.
Correct. So what would happen was all the kids figured out that Pallavi's mom will give her a hard time. So kids used to lie about the things I did. Kids used to lie about my taking their tiffin away. Kids used to lie about my eating stuff from their tiffin. Kids used to lie about my having, said something to them which was insulting or mean or hurtful. And I would be publicly thrashed. Like these kids in the neighborhood would come home and they would, when the mothers were together, they would come home and they would say these things in front of all the mothers gathered there. And I would be publicly thrashed, humiliated, slapped, scolded, told I was a liar, and why do I do this? Why do you do these things in front of everybody? So I think there came a point of time where I was like, fuck this, I don't want friends only. Mujhe akela hi chhod do, ya main khush hu. Leave me alone, I'm happy. Because, otherwise somehow or the other, somebody or the other would lie and I would get into trouble like this. I remember once a friend of someone had come over to spend time with us and we were like, jumping around and whatever, having a pillow fight or something like that. And she slipped and fell and I happened to fall on top of her and she twisted her ankle and it was like, Pallavi is the one who's broken her ankle. Yeah, it could have happened otherwise also. But of course, I felt deep shame and self-blame, for having caused somebody else's hurt. And obviously then, I didn't have friends also. So anyways, all that happened and then there was shame around puberty. So the first time I had my period, I just bled like like someone had cut me open and there was again no control on my bleeding. It stained through I don't know how many clothes. We had to go on a train journey at the same time. So it was just a horrific experience. Then there was shame around wearing a bra, so why do you jiggle so much? You need to wear a bra, right? Then there was the whole body hair thing. And, the sad thing is that, so initially it was just my mum shaming me. And then when it became puberty, she started ascribing all of these things to my father having said this about me. I don't know why she did that shift, but she did. And I've just recently figured out that actually, no, she was saying the same things to my dad. And my dad never said those things about me. So he claims, and I somehow believe him because they were never that's not his personality, So it was, that shame is even more when you're said, so and so said this about you.
Yeah, it's so much worse. It's like so much worse. Spotted it is okay, but somebody saw it. And you're just like, oh.
Yeah. Because then that powerlessness is at a different level altogether, You
Yeah.
can't even go and, even if it was my father, he's not addressed it to me. So how do I go and address it to him? That sort of a thing. Oh God. And that was just our family, I think. And next thing was boys. Oof, the horror of a boy finding out
Huh,
that
I can do all the
Pallavi liked
boys.
him. Yeah.
I can do all the
So,
boys horror.
yeah. Oof. And then, then there was, then there was clothes. And I remember, forget finding clothes in stores and how the, girls in the stores would look at you. The shop, the
Attendance.
salespeople, etc., etc. But I remember when I came back to India and they didn't have a uniform in my size. And I was the slimmest I was then, okay? I was like some 75 kilos or something like that when I was 15. Okay. And of course, that was fat. So they didn't have uniform in my size. So I had to get uniform stitched. And I thought I would be brave. And I asked the tailor to stitch one skirt only, like an inch above my knee, right? Which was the height of the
Yeah,
skirts
fashion.
everybody else wore.
Yeah.
Yeah, is irrespective of the rules, right? And I remember wearing that. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, I was like, okay, fat knees. But at least they're my knees. And I didn't have a problem showing them. My mum noticed this when we were at the bus stop. So we were already away from the house and said, wow, you look like a pig. Small head, big body. So disgusting. Look at yourself. Not saying look at your knees, but I knew this comment was because my skirt was an inch above my knees. And there was a pig passing by. So she actually pointed to that pig, and it was filthy, of course. But, that whole, how do you escape that image, when it's being given to you? And you're
By
15.
your mother.
Yeah, by your mother. And then I was so self-conscious at school the whole day because that pig was in my head. And then I remember my closest friend at that time, and she happened to look down at my knees, and the look of horror. I still see it like as bright as day. And that look of horror, and she just couldn't address it. Like, it was so horrifying. She couldn't address it. She just looked away. I put that skirt in my closet. I never took it out. And honestly, I know it's no longer a thing, but I think somewhere that still affects the fact that I just refuse to show my legs because, matlab, dekho hi mat bhai. I just don't want to show them to you. I have no interest in dealing with your reactions, So, shame was constant. The paralysis of having to dodge that shame was constant. And I'm talking about this till my teens, but I even remember an incident. We had all gone to Agra, my husband, me, my brother-in-law, and some friends of ours. And, my sister-in-law was randomly taking these photographs, and then she hooked it up to the television, and there was this one photograph where she took, like I was sitting on the side, so my stomach and my thighs and everything was showing. And, I was like looking all spread out, and everybody just went, oh, and she giggled, and I acted cool about it. And I think that's what breaks me more. The fact that I need to act cool when inside I'm feeling so broken.
No, and also the fact that these people are effectively, they're doing the emotional equivalent of hitting you in the face with a stick. And you're not
Yeah.
allowed to react to it and show them what they have done to you by saying that. You have to be
Yeah.
cool and chill, and because you deserve it. You see what I mean?
Yes. That because if I'd said anything at that time, I would have just been told, well, you should lose weight. If it bothers you so much, why don't you go and lose the weight? And at that time, I believed in that narrative. So,
No, but even now, if someone says that to me, whether I believe in the narrative or not, my response to them would still be, yeah, but you still don't have to be an asshole. Yeah, sure, if I want to lose weight, I can lose weight. But you don't have to be an asshole whether or not I lose weight. That's the point.
correct.
It's funny because if I look at my own memories of this, right, I would imagine, I know I have felt shame. I know I have. But when I try to think about it, sometimes I feel I've also blacked out a lot of my memories of the shame because it was just, I know everybody listening to this has felt that creeping, horrific shame. Like, you feel like someone has poured acid over you and you're burning and dissolving, but you're not disappearing and you're just stuck. And paralysis is the word there, like you're just totally frozen. So I do remember when I was in school once and we were showing something and I was showing something to everybody. I had to go to everybody's seat and show it to them. And it must have been class 5 or 6 or something. And I really needed to pee, but I wanted to finish showing it, and I got distracted, and then I got so distracted that I just peed myself in class. But nobody that I remember mocked me for it. Of course, like I said, I may have blacked it out. I was very, very ashamed of my belly. I always have been. My belly sticking out, my belly showing, poking it, touching it. People were not allowed to touch it for the longest time. It was a source of so much shame for me. And of course, shame. Every time I fell for somebody, every time I had a little crush, every time I get a little even today, I get a little excited by a guy, I get a little flirty. Like, I feel those butterflies of like excitement, and then I also feel that horrible, nauseous heaving of anticipated shame. Because how dare you like a guy? You fat, ugly sack. You don't have the right to like a guy. You're not allowed to feel these feelings. You should be ashamed of yourself. There you go, right? I love swimming. It's the only sport I enjoy. But I stopped swimming when I was a teenager because my classmates used to swim at the same pool. And I didn't want anyone to see my body in my swimsuit because I was fat and I was ugly. I mean, and this is a problem I've had for the longest time. I wouldn't go to beach on trips or like in foreign. Here, beach, of course, is shorts and t-shirt. But generally speaking, I would be so reluctant to be seen in a bathing suit. And I regret that now because I really enjoy swimming. I'm really good at it. And I think the first time I actually broke out of that was when I went to the Philippines in 2016 with my friend and his friends. And they were all young and hot. And then there was me. I was just like, I don't care. Nobody here is interested in me or going to be interested in me. So you know what? I'm just going to wear my goddamn swimsuit and be happy. And I did it. And survived, right? I always wanted to dance when I was younger. And I would always want to dance, but then I would be horrified at the jiggling. Jiggling, right? Jiggling is the worst crime. Like all sorts of my body would be jiggling and wiggling and bouncing. And like, oh God, oh God, oh God. Like, go out to the supermarket, you don't wear a bra. Oh, my breasts will jiggle, people. I'm like, people know you have breasts. Like, what is the point? Why do you feel shame about the fact that this is a physical manifestation of your body? And I might add, most people are pretty obsessed with breasts. So, I mean, why are we acting like they're a bad thing, a secret that needs to be hidden? One incident I really remember really in a big way was we had this flat somewhere in Hyderabad and I must have been 14 or 15, and my mother went to go and speak to the tenant about something and she was doing errands or whatever, so I was following her around like a good little puppy dog. And we go to this person's house and that person's mother was there, and then we have a chat, and then so after it's over she says, oh, is this your daughter? And my mother says, yes, this is my younger daughter. She says, oh, okay, when is the baby due?
God.
I wanted to dissolve and cease to exist in that moment. Like, literally, immediately. And that's the thing. Like, that shame takes over. It becomes so strong that you can't do anything else. You can't think about smart things. Like, when I was in Spain, when I was living in Spain, I'd gone to a nightclub one of the 4 times I went to a nightclub. And it was very close to my house. It was like a 15-minute walk, which is the other reason why I just walk home. And then I came out and I was not looking where I was going, which is something I often do. And there were these little posts that were on the pavement so that people wouldn't drive cars or bikes onto it. Yes, guys, people drive bikes on the pavement in Spain. And I didn't see it. And it's like below the level of height of my knee. So I sort of walked into it and I just completely flipped over and fell almost on my face. But I took a weight on my elbows and all. My knee, I was scared I had broken it for a while. It's an injury that I still have consequences of. Like, this happened in 2016. So, but in that moment at 2 o'clock in the morning, and there were like loads of people there. Most of them were from my MBA course. And one of them came and helped me up also. And I just ran, even though I could barely stand. Just needed to get out of there before people register anything. And I found a taxi and I just went home. And then a couple of days later, a friend of mine in B school was like, hey, how's your leg? I said, what do you mean? No, nothing wrong with my leg. And he was like, oh no, my friend said you fell down the other day when you were coming out of Callejon. And I was like, horrified. But it was so stupid because, I mean, it's not even like this person was saying, oh, you fat cow, you fell over in the street. Right? It's not even like that. It was just legitimate concern, Anyway, eventually, hobble, I went to a doctor, and God bless that doctor didn't say this happened because you're fat. So props to that one doctor. But yeah, that's the thing, that experientially shame is just always waiting for you. And I mean, I'm almost pathological about my tummy showing, which is kind of silly, but there you go.
Yeah. So when I hear you speak about all this, it just exacerbates it for me because, for me, shame is a very dark and very lonely emotion. It's like when you feel that sort of shame that we feel, you can't, and you can't talk about it to anybody because there's fat phobia and they're just going to project that fat phobia on you and say, but if you feel so terrible, then why don't you just lose the weight? And you just want to be by yourself and you just sort of implode upon yourself. At least that's how I experience it.
No, I would agree. It's like you want to just sink into nothing and disappear.
Yes. And for me, this is one area where I don't think healing is possible. I think the wounds are so deep and so embedded in my psyche that I don't think I'll ever be really capable of reaching all of them. And the analogy I think of is like when color runs on your favorite dress, but you still want to wear it. So you can't remove the color, but you just dye your whole dress to that color so that it just looks, fine and you can still wear it. I really feel that's how shame is. It sort of colors or discolors your whole life. And so I don't think it's ever going away, but I do think that I can be in more awareness of it. I can be in more compassion for myself. So I don't have to tell myself, no, don't feel shame. I can say, okay, baby, I know you're feeling ashamed and it's okay. Let's sit with it. Let's be with it together. Like I'm talking about telling my own self this. I do see this as a fractured fragment of my soul. And it's just, I know it's there. I know you're in pain. I know you've no choice but to wear that cast unendingly. But okay, I'm here with you now and I'm never abandoning you again because, I think that's what's important. That's what's important, that when I go into that state of I'm feeling so ashamed, of now being able to say, well, I'm here. I'm here. That presence. Versus I want to run away from that feeling, or I wish I'd never had that feeling, or I hate myself for the fact that I was in a position where I was shamed, all of that, all of those layers. So anyways, I think that's why we're doing this podcast, or that's why this means so much to me, these conversations we have. That's why I do the work. That's why I want to be a coach, That's why these energy alignment sessions are so important for me. I think that's where my empathy and understanding comes from in the first place, having experienced this and knowing this is, and because I think this is a part of a collective fracture, the psyche, a fracture in the collective psyche, because every single institution that exists on this planet asks us to conform in one way or another. And as we discussed it earlier, the threat of not conforming is being ostracized by society, So our livelihood, our family systems, our law and order all thrive on that threat, right? And however much of a loner you may be, you have to interact with society in some way or the other, right? So, yeah, so I think I feel shame is a much bigger entity than just me. So I feel that empathy and compassion, and I can feel it for myself. And I don't think anyone is safe from it. I don't think, even the most beautiful, richest, most perfect person on the planet would say, I have never felt shame. And the other interesting thing for me was when neuroscience says that basically human beings feel social pain like they feel physical pain. So when they put you under the MRI and you feel that shame or that social pain, the same parts of your brain light up as the parts of your brain that light up when you have physical pain. So, that's how we experience it. And that's why sometimes when people say they're in pain, they put their hands on their heart or they put their hands on their tummy because, you're actually feeling that pain in your body. And in fact, they even say that when you're undergoing heartbreak, you should pop a crocin or a anti-inflammatory because it actually helps, because it's that same center in the brain which gets that medication. So,
but it's not medical advice, just FYI.
No, of course it's not medical advice. I'm just saying this, from the fact that the same parts of the brain sort of light up. So, anyway. there's this book, The Portrait of Dorian Gray. And I loved reading that book. I really felt it was a very powerful piece of writing because in that book, Dorian Gray has this picture which basically takes on the ugliness of his actions, right? And he himself stays young and beautiful forever. And of course, in the book, they bring out his most bestial nature. But I think it was very powerful because for me, it helped me understand how guilt and shame impacts you at far more than an emotional level. It sort of, as I said again, dyes, your life, the way you look, the way you interact with the world, the way you move, etc., etc. And that's why it became important for me to embrace being unique, to be able to say, no, I don't need anybody else to tell me that I'm special. I can tell myself that I'm special and that I'm unique, and allow shame as a house fellow, because the moment I tell myself I'm special and unique, I may not conform to society, and that's okay because I'm unique, And I just felt that that's when I talk about the power of as one is, that's what I really mean. That, understanding shame as a house fellow and understanding just being able to tell yourself that I am special just because I exist, is just, and is very powerful. And I think that's what I'm working for now, being able to convey this.
Well, I cannot believe that Pallavi has just said that she cannot heal something. Guys, I'm going to need a minute here. I don't know if I should have tempered her sunny and extraordinary optimism with quite so much of my cynicism.
Oh, gosh.
But I guess it's a good indicator of how much shame torments us, that someone as full of hope and belief and light as Pallavi can turn around and say that there's no hope. That's really fucking terrifying, guys. So we really need to work towards collectively shaming shame, as it were. I mean, I still don't understand why we cannot use the power of the shame on people who pee on the street. Like, turn around and take a picture and just be like, yo, do this. But then that's the problem. Everything has a flip side. Like, for me, I wouldn't say I've healed from shame for obvious reasons. I still feel it, and it still has a lot of power over me in so many ways. But I think I've learned how to walk over it. Like, it stands in front of me, and then I just hop over it. So that, I'm like, you're not here, I'm ignoring you. I try to find out where it's coming from, and then I try to evaluate, is that a legitimate source? I feel shame that my belly is all big. Why? Because people say belly should be flat. Why? Because people say that the fat is ugly. Why? Because people say so? Well, I'm sorry, that's not a good enough reason. So I refuse to accept your shame. I still feel it, but I won't accept it. And actually, it's funny because last weekend, I had a really transformative moment. So I went to get a tattoo on my ribs. Guys, do not get a tattoo on your ribs. It is the worst pain I have ever experienced. And no. Seriously, I cannot tell you how much it hurt. Yeah. And I had to it was on my ribs. And I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. And I had to whip up my t-shirt. And lie there with my belly out. And I just I was like, should I ask for a private area? Should I? What? And then I was just like, no. And I just put up my t-shirt, stuck the thing on. About 1.5 hours, I was in a public space with lots of people around with my tummy out. Fully out there. And I was grateful for the pain after a point because it kind of distracted me from the shame. But the reality is that nothing tragic happened, nothing horrific happened. Nobody said, maybe they did not, but I didn't find out. And so for me that works is they didn't say or do anything. And to me, that counts as quite a win. And I remember, same place, I hopped off the table. I looked in the mirror and I saw that my shorts were showing my thighs above my knees. And then I've put on quite a lot of weight in the last 5 years, right? And I look at it and I realize that my thighs look like fat people thighs. Like my knees look like fat people knees, which they never did before. And I was like, so I'm a fat person. But I had that moment of shame just after having that moment of empowerment. The demons are just always waiting to jump on you, basically, especially with shame.
shame is not a pleasant emotion. And I think that's why I say that it's difficult to heal from shame, because it's always, I have to be in acceptance of the fact that it will always be there. It will happen. You know, I will go somewhere and feel ashamed, whether it's in an intimate relationship or in a public place or at a medical institution. It's going to happen. I can't run away from it. I can't eradicate it from my life, you know. But I can be aware of it and I can be compassionate. So I don't want to feel it. And that's my demon, that I don't want to feel it. I'm sure I will try and avoid situations where I might have it. But I know I can still be more compassionate about it and more aware. Also, other people feed off other people's shame. You know, this is something that I'm realizing. And they themselves have so much about it that it's a relief to project it on somebody else, you know, and feed off it. I think that's why we have so many of these. I'm horrified actually at the number of funny videos we have where it's people falling and hurting themselves and other people laugh at it. You know, I find that horrifying. But I think what works in those videos is not that everybody's a sadist, but just the fact that somebody else's shame sort of gives you a moment of relief because it's a distraction from your own shame.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. The biggest demon is shame. Even for me, it's shame. It's just that it exists, right? It always exists. You can't escape it. And even if I can personally escape it, the whole world is still expecting me to still be feeling it, right? So I not only have to find my demons, I have to fight other people's demons. Like, not only do I have to fight my own reluctance to wear a short skirt, then I have to convince everybody who's out with me that it's okay for me to wear the short skirt and it's not a horrifying thing. And the whole thing is so exhausting, I'll just fucking not wear the short skirt. Thanks very much.
I mean, I don't know. All of this has made me sort of think about the fact and taken the sting of shame a little bit away from me, to be honest, doing this episode, because it is other people's projections. It is other people's stuff. You know, it doesn't have a biological basis or a need for survival basis. So, looking at it that way.
Really, you think so?
I think so.
Okay, well, we should actually do some research into that, which we did not, and see if there is a biological basis for shame, or if there is a theoretical, like if anyone has any theories on the subject at any rate. But well, that's it from us today. Thanks for listening as always, guys. And you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can email us Gmail at fatsopodcast. And we are always waiting to hear from you. Please let us know if you can think of someone who'd be willing to be a guest on the show to talk about fat as it intersects with caste, with religion, with class, with being male. All of these things are things we want to talk about later in this season. This episode was recorded at 2 undisclosed locations in the National Capital Region. It will be edited by me. Our music was done by Anand. Our logo by Yash. Our photos by Suraj.